Today we conclude the Factions Compared series with a look at the Starfighters of the Republic, Confederacy of Independent Systems, Alliance, and Empire. Hey guys, this is Eckhart's Ladder. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of my Factions Compared series. In episode 1, we looked at the navies of each faction. In episode 2, the armies and ground forces. Links to those episodes down in the description. Today, as I mentioned, we will be profiling starfighters. Technically, this is a portion of the Navy, but in that episode, I focused more heavily on capital ships. Before we get into the content today, I just want to say that although at the beginning I said that this would be the concluding episode of this new series, I am totally open to doing more, whether that's different factions, different parameters, whatever you guys want, let me know down in the comments. With that out of the way, let's start our examination of these factions. We'll start, as we have with the past two videos, with the Empire. There's not a lot that I can say here that you guys probably don't already know. The Empire focused heavily on cheap, expendable starfighters, especially when compared to the Republic, which focused on space superiority fighters. The primary attack fighters for the Empire, the TIE Fighter and the TIE Interceptor, though maneuverable and possessing decent weaponry, were completely unshielded and relatively fragile. Now, while they weren't awful for fighting enemy starfighters, the typical TIE variant struggled against capital ships. Even the TIE Bomber, which most would expect would be well suited for the role, was relatively useless in space battles. It had no shields, was very slow, and was somewhat of an easy target, and more suited for fighting ground units or undefended hardpoints. That being said, the Empire did make use of some specialized TIE models, including the Avenger and the Defender. However, because of the cost of these fighters, and because the Empire was relatively stretched thin, having to police an entire galaxy, they didn't see nearly as much action as the three standard variants. The focus on expendability and cheapness would have been fine had the Empire actually focused on sheer numbers when fighting space battles. However, Imperial Star Destroyers were not dedicated carriers, and given that they were the most common ship in most fleets, the Empire traditionally did not have the numbers needed to make up for the lack of quality starfighters. In my opinion, this results in a relatively poor Starfighter Corps, which is only occasionally supplemented by true space superiority fighters. This is surprising given the Empire grew out of the ashes of our next faction, the Galactic Republic. In my opinion, the Republic Navy has an excellent mix of fighters. They have a different craft type for each given role, and they have a mix of space superiority and expendable starfighters. One of the most ubiquitous fighters in the Republic Navy was the ARC 170. The ARC was a heck of a fighter. It was fairly heavy, it brought a lot of firepower to bear. I'd say the only real weakness is it did lack some speed and maneuverability when compared with other mainline starfighters. It was an interesting mix of a space superiority fighter and a heavy bomber, and it was somewhat unique given it was crewed by multiple people and had a rear-facing gun. That ship was accented well by more heavy, dedicated bombers like the Y-Wing and lighter fighters like the V-Wing and the Torrent. The only thing that I would have liked for the Republic to have that it doesn't is a highly maneuverable, high firepower, shielded starfighter. The closest thing they have is the Z-95. However, that ship was a significant step back when compared to the modern X-Wing. The ARC 170 could do many of the same things that the X-Wing could, however was significantly heavier, slower, and less maneuverable. Admittedly, the Delta does somewhat fit this role, however it was used almost exclusively by Jedi and was fairly rare within the Republic fleet. One thing worth noting is that because of the heavy presence of Venator-class Star Destroyers within the Republic fleet, starfighters were often fielded en masse. The Republic was also not afraid to use heavily specialized starfighters like Y-Wings should the situation require them. Next up, we have the Rebel Alliance, and I just want to say the Alliance has the serious benefit of coming after the Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Systems. The Alliance built heavily off Republic-era designs. The less common Z-95 and the ARC 170 were hybridized into the X-Wing, an excellent space superiority fighter. The X-Wing was shielded, carried decent firepower, and was relatively fast and maneuverable, a great balance and really effective against every starfighter available to the Empire. I do also think there's something to be said about having a space superiority starfighter being the mainline craft in your Starfighter Corps. The heavy use of the X-Wing gave the Alliance a flexibility which matched their ragtag nature. The X-Wing, however, was also well supported by specialized vehicles. On one hand, we have the bombers. There's the Y-Wing, which is a subtle upgrade over the Republic-era vehicle, and also the B-Wing, which operated in the very unique specialized heavy bomber role. Then replacing the myriad of Republic interceptors was the A-Wing, itself an improvement on the Republic-era V-Wing. Given the resources of the Rebel Alliance, I would certainly not call this vehicle expendable, but it was certainly lighter, faster, and more like a TIE fighter than any of the Rebel Alliance's other ships. Admittedly, the Alliance did not have as many starfighter types as the old Republic. However, I will say that I think it did everything it needed to very, very effectively, and having the X-Wing be the main starfighter in your navy is a great choice, better perhaps even than the ARC 170. The inclusion of a heavy bomber also makes the Alliance Navy somewhat unique. It was the quality of these ships along with vulnerabilities in Imperial design philosophy which allowed the Alliance to win the Galactic Civil War, plus with some help of the Force. Finally, we have the Confederacy of Independent Systems, which is, in my mind at least, an interesting mix of these previous three factions. Like the Empire, the Confederacy was fairly specialized, but made use of cheap fighters. The main difference being that the starfighters of the Confederacy were either autonomous or controlled by droids, typically the former. Now, using Droid Starfighters does come with a whole array of positive and negative effects. On the positive side, you have droids that can react extremely quickly to situations and which can pull off incredible maneuvers. On the other hand, you lose some of the creativity of organic starfighters, your Wedge Antilles, your Luke Skywalker, your Han Solo. However, the Confederacy did use Droid Starfighters in the right way, through swarm tactics. I will say I do wish the Confederacy had like one killer starfighter, a shielded starfighter, some sort of tank, something like the TIE Avenger or TIE Defender. I do really like the droid TIE Fighter, but even that is not shielded. Still, I guess it works with the way that they use their starfighters, again, in heavy numbers. So with this brief understanding of each faction, let us now rank the list. Coming in at number 1 is the Rebel Alliance. They needed good starfighters to win the war, and boy did they ever get them. The X-Wing, which was the backbone of their fleet, is an incredible multi-purpose and space superiority fighter. Although they do have less ship types than the Republic, they seem to be able to fill each specialized role with a great fighter. Next, and only just barely in second place, is the Republic. I do like most of their starfighter designs, including the ARC 170, but I do think they miss out by not having a common space superiority fighter with the speed and pure functionality of the X-Wing. Coming in at third, we have the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and don't get me wrong, they still had an excellent Starfighter Corps, given their focus on swarm tactics. However, I think that I just personally prefer organic pilots to droid pilots, and I think I prefer high-quality starfighters to cheap ones, but again, that's just a doctrinal decision on my end, but at least they use their cheap starfighters correctly. I will say, droid starfighters did have some limitations when it came to things like refueling and how long they could operate for, which would impact overall tactics, but generally they were well-made fighters. Coming in at number 4, once again, is the Galactic Empire. The Empire had some serious issues. They focused on cheap starfighters but didn't make enough of them. This was largely because the Empire and the Navy was spread out across the galaxy, but that doesn't save them from having the worst Starfighter Corps on this list. But these are all just my opinions. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Am I underestimating the Empire, or perhaps even the Republic, overestimating the Alliance, not giving enough credit to droid starfighters? Let me know all of that and more down in the comments. Also, let me know if you have any good ideas for the continuation of this series, and any videos you'd like to see in the future. Finally, I would like to give a special thank you to today's guest editor, Freight Train. You can check out his channel by clicking the annotation on the top right-hand corner, or visiting the link down in the description. Thanks, Freight Train. As always, this has been Eckhart's Ladder. May the Force be with you.